Hey folks, Dr. Brian King here once again for another episode of On the Road with Dr. Brian. This time we are once again in Montreal. I think the last one we did was Montreal. No, we were in Dallas for the last one. You know, we don't do enough podcasts, but we are in Montreal, and we've been enjoying the summer here. It's been a wonderful time. I've got my co-host Sarah Bollinger as always. Sarah,
yes, welcome to our Montreal home.
That's right. This is actually our place, so we're not on the road. Actually, we're should we call it in the house?
I guess it's our pit stop. We're not here for long.
Yeah, we will be back on the road in like 2 weeks. And do you want to introduce our guest, or do you
Yes,
want to?
we're here with Catherine Gagnon, who Brian met recently at a comedy show.
Yes.
That's right. How are you, Catherine?
I'm very well, just living the comedian dream, I guess.
The comedian dream. You're a rare comedian.
I am.
And I say you're rare because of your day job, or I guess it's a night job. I don't know. What hours do you work?
pretty flexible hours. I'm a sex worker, and it's certainly not something I expected to do in my life. But
You mean you didn't grow up and say, "Mommy, I want to be a sex worker"? I don't want to do the oldest, profession in the world.
yeah, no. So if we're getting specific, I'm a sugar baby.
Okay.
So basically, it's you find your clients through a specific site, but and it's something I talk about in my comedy. Actually, that's the bit that you saw.
Yeah.
The people that I see through the site, they want to maintain this illusion that it isn't prostitution, that they are not purchasing services from a prostitute. So you kind of have to play this game, but I mean, at the end of the day, there's an exchange of money for, sexual services.
So when they get the invoice, it doesn't say like sex,
Exactly.
$100, but it says like treating me well, buying me this, gifts,
Well, gifts, no. I don't want gifts. I can't pay my bills with gifts.
Right.
That's something that they
What
often
about a
insist
cash
on.
gift?
Yeah, cash gift, exactly. Cash, for sure. You do have some on the site. So it's a bit difficult through the site, and I am kind of branching out now because of this kind of disillusionment that you kind of have to play along to.
It's almost a bit of role playing on its own, which is extra effort, right?
It is extra effort, and also it means that conversation about boundaries regarding costs and such can be maybe a bit uncomfortable and shouldn't be. I mean, at the end of the day, you know what you're getting yourself into when you're on this site, so it's not up to me to have to go through an uncomfortable conversation because you just haven't accepted that you are purchasing services from a prostitute.
Right. Yeah.
So you're working specifically through a website.
Yeah.
I gotcha. It's like Sugar Babies.
Seeking arrangements. I'm sure many people know of Seeking Arrangements.
Oh, I'm on that site.
Many people are.
So the whole for those. I mean, a lot of people know, but some people might not know the terminology. Like there's sugar daddies who are like guys who like to spend money. Sugar mamas who like to
Sugar mamas are rare. I've looked far and wide.
All right, we've been looking too. We have. If we could get a couple of those from this podcast.
They're hard to find.
If any potential mamas are out there watching this podcast, any one of us actually,
Exactly.
you can sponsor. Just give us a call. Yeah, no, I do things for a sugar mama.
Right?
I'd loan Sarah out for
Yes.
So they're rare.
They're rare.
And have you had any encounters with them? Have you been hired by any mamas?
Not mamas, no.
Just
unfortunately,
papas?
just papas, yeah.
Mamas
I mean,
and
let's be
papas.
honest. Also, economically speaking, men have all the money, so.
Yeah, that is true. Yeah.
Well, I think also, the experience I've had with the men on the site is they're not. I guess one of the positive sides is the site and the relationship dynamic they can create kind of allows people to maybe have more polyamorous relationships, which they can't openly necessarily talk about in their circles or even to themselves. So because a lot of my clients, I mean, they're not just seeing me. Let's be honest, And typically through that site, you maintain a client over an extended period of time. You know, there are some one-offs, but it's more rare. So for them, I think it gives them the opportunity to also have, like I said, more polyamorous type relationships, and also to be very kind of overt about their expectations, and not feel like, you know, that they're, you know, there's too much expected of them, time-wise or investment-wise. So there's this kind of mutual understanding. I think that, so in the end, they are, you know, they could have typical relationships, but I get the sense that they're not looking for a conventional relationship.
Yeah. With polyamory, there's always the potential that you're going to fall in love with another person and like leave the first person, or you know. But with professional, it's like love's off the table, you know, or kind of, right?
Kind of, and that's the ambiguity too, you know, because there's a lot of people that I've met on the site that have become, you know, really good friends. And I even had a client for a year before COVID that was in the States that, you know, he...
Which state?
In Maine.
Okay, so you would go to Maine, or he'd come to Montreal?
I would go to Maine. He would come sometimes, but typically I would go to Maine. And he even met my mom and helped my mom out.
Why wouldn't he? He's a sugar daddy.
Exactly. He was a cosmetic dentist, and I initially actually started to do it to do sex work because dentistry is so expensive. So that was
I remember that from your comedy.
Yes, the 60K smile.
$60,000.
Yeah, I mean, I had a pretty rough upbringing, and I was bulimic when I was a teenager, so I had a lot of dental work to do. Trauma, just the usual prostitute story.
Because you talk about your $60,000 mouth, you talk about taking your family on vacations and stuff, you know, I mean, you've been working, you know, and
yes.
What do you don't have to reveal like what your income is, but like what do you charge per client? Is there something like that, or?
So now I've actually so when you start, you know, there's no manual. So when you start, and like I said on the site, because it's a bit ambiguous and there's, you know, typically younger women, sometimes much younger, who are inexperienced, who don't necessarily know their value. Not that you can attribute a monetary value to yourself, but still, you know, it's more attributing a monetary value to your work, you know.
Absolutely.
So when you start, you really lowball yourself, you know, and I know a lot of women who have been on the site who also lowball themselves, but then as time went on, I definitely stopped doing that, and I also started charging for social dates.
So you go out in public
do the women on the site have the capacity to chat with one another?
So you are not, as a sugar baby on the site, you cannot talk to other sugar babies, and as a sugar daddy, you can't talk to other sugar
Because
babies.
they often say...
where's like the break room where you guys can just
That's messed up.
talk shop?
Right, well, they often say, you know, when one of the things of gender gap is that women don't talk to each other enough to realize, and that women and men don't talk to with any job. You know, they don't talk to each other, and so you don't know what is typical for your profession. The employers want to hold the power.
Well, salary. We're talking about salaries.
That's not just women, though. I mean,
but
talking about what you make is not really allowed in any employment place.
Which is a problem.
It does. It keeps wages lower.
Exactly.
That's why employers make that rule.
Exactly.
You know? But I feel like
the issue with sex work is
like a contractor, like self-employed person.
Yeah, autonomous worker.
Yeah.
And even that's a bit ambiguous as far as like, you know, lawfully speaking. I mean, we're decriminalized as sex workers, and the people who purchase the services are technically criminalized.
Right.
Though nobody in the history of Canada has ever been, you know, has ever been charged as a customer.
Is that true? Really?
No.
That's interesting.
Not anywhere in the provinces?
Out of curiosity in the past, I've looked up, you know, as things have changed through history. I'm always interested in that, even historically.
She was looking for a job.
I'll never do
It doesn't. It doesn't require a work visa.
Exactly. Though they will stop you at the airport if they do. I've had that happen.
But I know even historically in Quebec, you know, men were here first, right? In the founding of the country.
Yeah.
And then the women came in the boat, so they had kind of their choice, so they had power in that, you know, coming in. And, of course, if you go to Quebec City, if you go to Montreal, you go take even the city tours, they don't say prostitutes, but they say women. Women have the power, and then so they make the jokes that, well, Quebec City has the most beautiful women because they get their choice. No, Montreal has the best city. They passed up on Quebec City as they were coming down the river.
Prostitution was just legal across the board, like up until a few years ago, right?
It was in like in 2014, something like that. It was the conservatives who.
It was a loophole, which in the laws, and then they just kind of closed that loophole because I don't know why they were tired of telling our wives that they were hiring prostitutes. I don't know.
I think it's well, the issue too. What it boils down to, I mean, there's all these discussions about whether to legalize or not. I think. In the case of sex work, it's ideal not to decriminalize both the sex workers and the people who purchase the services, but not to legalize because that means government regulation,
and it means their foot in,
exactly,
how you can do it,
and how much you can earn, and they're gonna and at the end of the day, like the work that we do, first of all, is hard work, and just. I mean, it's riskier work physically.
Sure, yeah.
I mean, you're putting it's like laborious physically. So ideally, we would decriminalize. I'm not sure where I was going with that.
I don't know.
But not legalize.
But not legalize. Yeah, exactly.
So
what I was saying is that.
So you want to be able to earn a living, but you don't want the government telling you how.
Yes. Well, especially in the context of sex work because it's very specific kind of work, and it's the same principle as government deciding whether or not women have access to abortion. This is not something you understand, it's not something that this is my body, and the choices that I make according to that body are mine to make, and wages within the sphere of sex work need to be my choice,
Right, and what you do with it, and I'm sure you get customers who have specific fetishes that they like things or they don't like things.
Vanilla, to be honest.
Interesting.
Pretty vanilla.
Really? Nobody's hiring you to do some crazy stuff. Everybody's
No, I mean, listen, like half the population worldwide has a foot fetish.
So you said, we joked around in the beginning about how this wasn't your first choice, it wasn't like the sort of, how did you get into it?
So I was 25, so it was about 4 or 5 years ago, and I was in university at the time. I was studying arts, so not making money. And my last year, I had been married to someone. Actually, I was in a relationship for 6 years, and I was bored out of my mind. Sorry, Victor, you were lovely. But
It happens.
Yeah.
Sorry, Victor. I hope you're not watching this.
I guess at that point, I had grown up with a very kind of strict, kind of religiously fanatic father, and very kind of like boxed in black and white thinking. And I left from my home very young and came to the city to be with my mom, and slowly kind of I finished school later. Like I had a pretty turbulent few years as a teenager, but then I went back to school to go into art, and being in art school started to kind of open up my mind to various things like feminism, like queer culture, like polyamory, and all these different things, and I just started to feel like, I never got the opportunity to explore sides of myself that were maybe more adventurous than I had ever been allowed to be. And so I reached a point in this relationship at school where I'm like, I'm fucking miserable. Like, I'm miserable. I don't know where I'm going. I don't feel good in my relationship. I don't feel good at school, and I need to fix my fucking teeth, And someone had told me about seeking arrangements. And I made an account. Oh my God, my first date was hilarious. It was January. I met him. It was like blizzard, so just white. You couldn't see. I met him. We went to an Italian restaurant. So the restaurant was basically empty except we had our table in the corner, and then there was another table a little higher up of like an older men and 2 younger women, which I was like,
Is this the place?
And then as we were sitting and drinking, there's a group of like 12 middle-aged men who came, who as we were eating, we had 2 bottles of wine, so we're getting pretty drunk. And the table over of these 12 men, they keep kind of looking over and snickering, and I'm like, so that was my first exposure to, I guess, like judgments towards, this kind of, obviously when you see older men with a beautiful young woman.
So you think they knew something?
Oh my God, absolutely, they were.
Maybe
and
they were just looking at him like, ooh, is that guy rich?
Well, it got pretty intense. He, speaking of foot fetishes, he took my foot and put it on his lap. I'm like, okay. And he took my boot off and he just like starts massaging it. I'm like,
at the restaurant?
At the restaurant. I'm like, okay. And we're pretty drunk at this point. Now the table is like just roaring laughter, and it's like quite a scene. And then he takes my foot that had a sock on and puts it in his mouth in the restaurant. Now this table is just roaring with laughter. It's like a big scene. And we get up to leave, and one of them kind of yells over, hey baby, are you gonna take care of me too? And I told him to fuck off. And then I left, and the table of the older man with the 2 younger women, he just stopped me and he was like, good for you. That was my first, yeah.
See, I'd be like, fuck off, here's my business.
Yeah, exactly. Well, now I definitely would have been like, what's your annual income?
And if somebody's gonna approach you like that, like you charge them double.
Exactly.
You gotta pay the
Because
asshole
you're
tax.
dealing, exactly, yeah.
So it's been how long then since you been doing it?
About 4 or 5 years, though. I stopped during COVID because
There's no work.
no work, and I mean, even people that you would meet.
Actually, I bet you there was probably a lot of potential work, but
it's too difficult because you can't meet them in a public place.
Right. And you're not gonna bring them over to your house.
I know there was work. I follow a few websites, and actually one on Instagram that's really interesting, who posts articles regularly about ongoing things regarding sex workers. And there was here in Canada quite a women who did. They, even when there were more shut down things, but yeah, it was super risky for them, from what I learned, because they would have to go to homes. It would a lot of times women would go together. Apparently, like, one would wait in the car, they would go to this person's house, they would be communicating, however, text or whatnot, and
I mean, the issue with that is, like, even if there's someone outside waiting for you, if the thing happens, I mean, it's happened.
Yeah.
You can't undo.
No.
Yeah, that person's just like, all right, you're taking a little while longer.
Yeah, exactly.
And so, I know it definitely was, and I know, others.
Plus, you have to wear a mask, when you're doing it.
Exactly.
Who were saying they were getting like ridiculous offers during that time.
Yeah.
Like, I'll pay you quadruple what I would normally pay you because I'm so desperate. I'm locked in my house. And
A lot of people became sex workers during the pandemic.
Oh yeah. There was a boom. I mean, because for me, I said, I never expected to do this, but the reality is, since I started doing this, my life has improved dramatically.
Yeah.
Just as far
so
as
not just your teeth.
Not just my teeth, though that does contribute. No, I mean just the liberty, even the like I said, I come from a very low income family, and I kind of grew up in this mindset of poverty, so to realize that I am entrepreneurial, I do have the capacity, to do work that is profitable, that is on my terms, and there's a reason, you were at the show, there's a reason they call me loudmouth bitch. It also gives me the opportunity to talk about issues that I care about deeply that affect women,
I like that, so you told me before we started recording that the night I met you at a comedy show because I don't hire prostitutes. Officially, according to my podcast, still I don't hire them, Sarah pays for them.
There you go.
I'm a sugar
But yes, we met at a comedy show, and you were very. The thing I thought was remarkable about you was you were very funny, you were engaging. I mean, you had all these great qualities as a comedian, but then you were so open about this life that you lead. And I have known at least one other prostitute turned comedian, and interestingly enough, also Canadian.
That's funny.
Other side of Canada, but Yeah, it just seemed like the thing that really struck me is that your mom was in the audience,
Yes.
and then your wife, was it? You're married.
My wife,
you're married
yeah.
now, and like a sister. Like you had this whole family come
Yeah.
up to see you,
Yes.
and then you told us before the podcast that was the first time you were openly public about being a prostitute.
Well,
not to them, I
not
would
to
assume,
them,
because you
not
took
to
mom
them.
on vacation.
Yeah.
But yeah, so I think that was really kind of cool. What made you decide to be so open and public about your profession?
Well, I mean, at some point it's hard to explain what I'm doing. You know, I'm traveling to the States monthly. I was also, my mom was sick.
Do you have one of those fast passes?
Yeah, I did. I was living with my mom when I started to do it, or shortly thereafter. And my mom was ill at the time, very sick, and she couldn't work, so I was supporting her. So that was another reason why I was also inclined to start doing it. And yeah, I mean, my mom is also just like really a wonderful, wonderful person, and so open-minded and so caring. And you know, at the end, I think she would just rather know what I'm doing. And
Do you, when you first told her, did she suspect anything?
oh yeah,
Or were you just
yeah.
Where are you getting all this stuff?
Yeah, like what's coming home with a Louis Vuitton purse? What's going on, you know? So she was, at first obviously it was shocking, you know, because she'd never been exposed to that. You know, she had no friends who were sex workers. She had no, most people don't say it to anyone.
Yeah.
And I'm really, really lucky to have this space within my, you know, community, my close community and family to be surrounded by, you know, just crazy fucks. So
I suppose it helps when you can come home at your work, or whatever, the end of the day and say, how was work, honey, today? Well, it sucked, this happened, or it was good, or what was it?
Tough day in the office. I'm laying down all day.
to be honest, the work consists mostly of like, you know, I'm just like an underpaid psychotherapist, to be honest.
I totally know that.
Yeah.
I respect that.
Yeah.
I've been open about this on previous podcasts, but I think the work that sex workers do is extremely valuable, and it's not appreciated enough by most members of society, because most members of society don't hire sex workers, you know.
Yeah.
But they don't understand is that most of the guys that contract you, they just need companionship and someone to talk to, and they got something, you know, and they don't have that in real life, you know.
Well, sex workers too have been responsible for a lot of health initiatives.
Oh my God.
Both physical and mental. Even during the pandemic, it was like a huge thing, and I guess during the porn time, during the pandemic, they even set precedences like we're doing the testing this way, we're doing this way, and how come we're not doing that? Oh, we should probably follow that model. That's a good model.
Yeah, they were the ones that invented the 8-inch long Q-tip that they would shove in. I'm kidding. But they do good work, and that's the thing people don't understand. It's not just like, dude, I just need to get off real quick. You know what I mean? It's the people that hire you are, you know, people who are looking mainly for, you know, some companionship for a little while.
Well, I mean, at the end of the day, you know, like just because you don't hire a certain service doesn't take away from the value in that service. You know, like, you know, half the world's population doesn't need a gynecologist, but we fucking need gynecologists, you know? So just because it's not something that it's the same principle as like, just don't stick your nose where in places that you are not affected, like.
You know, it's interesting, people don't appreciate sex and sex work cuts down on violent crime. It cuts down on, because, you know, all the issues that frustrated males bring to society, it cuts down on all of that.
Yeah. And think about, I have a friend, she's someone that's, I know through someone that does sex work mainly with handicapped people, and for handicapped people. So, I mean, this is a whole portion of the population that's completely, nobody's thinking, miserable, and I mean, even just economically speaking, socially speaking, they don't have access to a lot of the resources they need. And I think that should even be a right, you know, covered by healthcare for people who don't have, you know, necessarily the possibility of having, because human connection and sex are so important.
Something I say, I'm an occupational therapist by training, and we have this whole model of things that fall within the normal occupations of humans and things that we're supposed to address. sexuality is one of them.
Huge.
Hardly ever addressed.
Yeah.
Because people don't know how.
They're afraid too.
Yeah, and they're afraid.
This is in America where it's illegal and criminalized.
Yeah.
So it's a little different.
Yeah, it's absolutely. I just, speaking of different abilities, I just read an article the other day about a young man who's a teenager and his mother hired a sex worker because he was on the Asperger's scale. And he wanted to have a normal experience and normal part of what's normal urges. And so they actually worked, and I don't know if this was in the UK perhaps or somewhere, I don't recall.
Australia.
Oh, was it? Yes, it was Australia. I read you part of the story, yeah, that's right. And they managed to get it part of his healthcare, like it was.
Yeah.
They could have had it, I think actually they could have had it paid for as part of the healthcare. Ultimately she felt, you know what, I just want to pay for it. So they actually had these books or whatever, and she looked through them first and she's like, here's the characteristics of them, what do you think would fit best for you? And set up this encounter first, just casual, meet for coffee. Do we think this is going to work? And she tells a story where I dropped off my son, I went into this place, I gave him, when he was ready, I came and picked him up, I asked no questions.
That's so lovely!
But, it really helped his son, and it helped his son, somebody who can't read social
cues
and things like this, have a normal sexual interaction, and understand, and then if he wants to have regular relationships and normal sexual encounters,
at least he feels confident enough that,
And also, he learns a little bit about, how to read, other people's body language and intent, so which is something that they miss out on. So very often what you provide is therapeutic. Now you, from what I understand about sugar babies and the relationship you have with daddies, is it's like a long-term thing. So do you have like a set of clients that you carry, or do you have like short-term people that come in and out? Or?
So it's pretty fluid. That's the reality of being a sexual worker or an autonomous worker in general. There's not necessarily stability. Sometimes you're making a lot of money and it's good, and sometimes it's not so good. But typically, I guess on average, I've had relationships that last about half a year, all in all, if I'm thinking of all of them. And sometimes the line gets a bit blurred, which is also why I approach it a bit differently now. The line of between clients and just, a regular relationship can become kind of blurred. Mostly in their eyes, because in some ways it's kind of the girlfriend experience that I'm giving. So I've had to set more, I guess, concrete boundaries, simple things like, I'm not going to text you good morning every day, and I don't want you to text me good morning every day.
Right.
We spend our time together, and that's great, but after that, I'm an independent person who has my life, and you do as well. But yeah, typically it's about 6 months, and then I guess now I charge for. There's a lot of things that have evolved, like I was saying in the beginning. I would spend whole nights with a client, which now I typically don't do because this is we're talking, a 12-hour shift. If we're, so now I don't necessarily spend the nights, and I charge. Usually my bottom line is $600, and then. For social dates, it's usually between $200-300, and I've had allowances in the past, which range from, in the beginning, $1,500 a month to anywhere to like $3,000 a month.
I am in the wrong business.
So you said you have an entrepreneurial spirit. You're definitely artistic. You were in art school. You like comedy and things. Do you see yourself doing more? I mean, how long do you foresee yourself doing this? You never foresaw yourself starting it.
Yeah, I mean, it's a pretty open-ended book. I feel like it's only this year, and that's why I thought it was also relevant to talk a bit about the comedy, because it's talking about it on stage and kind of maybe restructuring the way that I viewed sex work and myself as a sex worker changed through the bits that I wrote, and I think there was a part of me in the beginning that was still very influenced by, you know, the conventional rhetoric around it, that it's not real work. So I didn't value what I was doing. But talking about it in my bits and kind of dissecting it allowed me to view it differently. And now, you know, I guess before there was this feeling that I needed to come out of it at some point, whereas now it's more just like,
well,
the cash is rolling in.
I wasn't implying that you should.
No, absolutely
I just
not.
mean like you still have that there. For me, I'm like, oh, I've got all this money, and of course I have things I need to accomplish now. I want my teeth. I need to help my mother. But for me, I would look at that and say, oh, this is an opportunity. Are you saving for the future, for example?
Yeah, I finally have savings for the first time in
I
my
was gonna
life.
say, I hope you're investing it and not like, you know, snorting it or something.
No, in the beginning, it's the first time I
It's like
did
a
that
party,
kind of
like,
thing.
when you get a nice, when you're not used to having money and suddenly you have all this money come in, like there's a temptation to like just want to party, and you do that. But
I did do that.
eventually you have to like keep some of it, so you know, because it's not going to come in forever, and that's the thing about being autonomous business. You know?
Yeah, and it's true for, you know, all the things that whether it's comedy or sex work, but I definitely went through that passage.
I will tell you, you will make a lot more money in sex work than comedy.
Yeah!
I'll tell you that.
So.
I know you made $100 the night that we I'm sure that you had to work far less to make a lot more.
Oh my God, yes, absolutely. But what's great about doing that is that it gives me the opportunity to do comedy, which is something that I just genuinely love, and that I didn't expect to do either at all, you know?
You're very expressive, you're very open. I could see you becoming, writing a book about your experiences.
That was something that I started to do, but it's kind of trailed off.
I mean, like, there's all kinds of potential to share your story, whether it's on a comedy stage to a room full of people or to a broader audience, as you develop it, and the story itself could take you in different places. And even, hey, I read your book, how much do you charge?
Yeah, exactly.
You know what I mean?
Even through comedy, I'm hoping.
Exactly. You should put like a QR code on stage. You know what I mean?
True.
Book a date with this comedian.
Yes. I need to up this entrepreneurial spirit.
You know what I mean? Cut out the website middleman.
Yeah.
Go straight into their pockets.
Yeah.
So you clearly enjoy being a sex worker, and you're not ashamed of it, which is what I absolutely love. Because I don't like, and this is very common, me and Sarah talk about this a lot, people treat sex work as like if it's their last resort, like if I lose everything, I'll sell my body. You know what I mean? Like, why is that your last resort?
Yeah.
Like, why is that? Like, why? I mean, look, you tell me you're gonna work at McDonald's before you'd be a sex worker. You know, you know how much more money you'd get. Or like, Starbucks has benefits. You don't need benefits when you're making this kind of money. You know, it's strange that people have that.
The rhetoric also that kind of like, I guess, reinforces these stigmas is the notion that, like most of us exactly that are not in it by choice in some form or another.
And that's terrible because
some external force.
You shouldn't.
But that's not the reality of when we get together.
The idea that people have.
Yes.
Like, if things ever get really bad for me, I'll do this. But why? Why let that be the motivator to start an potentially incredible career?
We had a show in a strip club in Dallas. It was a comedy club.
Well, comedy show in the strip club.
Yeah, it was a signed room. We had a comedy show in the strip club. And then the headliner that day, we went to a party afterward. We go inside. They open up so you can go to the strip club. And one of the guys is like, no, I feel sorry for those girls. And I'm like, really? Why? You think they're all just
they
like
feel
being
sorry for
forced
you.
to dance?
But here's the thing about that, right? Those girls dancing at night made more money than that guy will ever make.
Well, this is the that's kind of the way that I appease myself when I get any sort of comments. I'm like, generally they're coming out of the mouth of someone who is not leading half as an exciting
Right.
life as I am, you know.
Yeah.
They
So
don't make nearly what you make.
I feel sorry
They don't
for
get
you.
to take exotic vacations and do, they have to live with their fucked up teeth.
Yeah,
you know what I mean? Like,
exactly.
it's like,
Oh my god, and sex work
Oh, my
takes you
teeth.
to very
Yeah.
unexpected
Have
places.
you ever been, I'm sure you've been taken places like vacations or something like that.
Yeah.
Where have you gone on sex work?
So I've typically had clients in the States, so I did a lot of just traveling within the States, you know, Nevada, Las Vegas, went to Las Vegas.
Which is weird to me, actually. If I was gonna hire a prostitute, and I'm in Vegas, there's legal prostitutes, literally like right outside of Vegas.
But that was with a client that I had been seeing for
Right,
an extended
right,
period of
yeah.
time, so yeah. But I went to Barcelona, I went to, where else have I gone? I didn't travel that much with sex work because of the pandemic, basically.
Well, now it's picking up, right?
Now it's
4 or
picking
5
up.
years. Yeah.
Exactly.
This next guy comes along and be like, I really want to go to Ibiza.
Yes.
And I want you to take my friends Brian and Sarah.
There's a list. There's a waiting list.
Oh, man.
My entourage.
Listen, okay. I'll accept that there's a list and that we came late in that list. But if anybody says, hey, I heard about you on this podcast.
Okay, then it bumps you up.
All right, I get a piece of that.
It's a
Actually.
deal. It's a fair deal. Fair deal.
All right.
Yeah. There's definitely, it's funny for people around me too. You know, I do have a very open-minded circle, but obviously there's still people like, you know, who just had never been friends with a sex worker, you know, so it's still, but then exactly that, they see me traveling, they see me doing, you know, so yeah.
Honestly, I think I'm so glad you're open. In fact, I said this to you when I met you. I wish more people who do what you do for a living were open, so it would help reduce that stigma. You know?
Well, it's kind
Like,
of a
I
two-way
personally
street
know
for the
other people
women, because
who-
the issue is that most of these women who are not being open about it are not being open for safety reasons,
Yeah.
you know?
And I get that, but okay, here's an analogy, right? Drugs.
Yeah.
Drugs were illegal for a long time.
Yeah.
They're legal marijuana anyway, legal up here, almost legal in the United States, right?
Yeah.
Lots of people were dealing weed for a long
Yes.
time, and they didn't want to tell other people that they were dealing weed because they were breaking the law.
Yeah.
But when people started to become more open about their usage of marijuana,
Yeah.
that's when people started to recognize, oh, society thinks a certain way.
Yes.
And we shouldn't stigmatize this. We shouldn't stigmatize the people who are bringing us the thing that we want to purchase. You know
Well,
what I mean?
you know, then if we speak historically, not to get all nerdy, but then that means and that means though that probably the solicitors of services.
So
need
I was
to be
actually
the
going to
ones
say,
They need to be
I have
open too. They need to be
clients
open
who
too.
probably
Yeah.
won't mind that I mention him because he's lovely, Boris, love you, kisses. He's recently, he owns the Compassion Club here, so he was a big part of the movement to legalize in Canada, and obviously, well, they succeeded, so now he's on to his next project. And he's someone who purchases sex work very frequently, has many sex workers around him, and he recently started to engage more with kind of, you know, maybe activism within that sphere, and also, you know, reading up on feminism and kind of broadening his horizons in that sense. And he started to think, you know, well, what is the best way for me to approach this cause as someone who is not a sex worker, as someone who is not a woman. There's not only female sex workers, but you know, typically. And in the process of reading a lot on feminism, it gave him the perspective of like, I need to come from personal experience and not speak on behalf of women, because historically this is what always happens. So his solution is he's writing a book. It's his coming out as a client.
Oh, wow.
That's
Cool.
good.
Very cool.
Yeah, because I mean, you look at.
Hey, well, when that book comes out, let me know.
I will.
We'll check that out.
But yeah, you look at women's voting rights, and it didn't become just because women were doing the protesting for women's voting rights. It's because the men were, you know.
Exactly.
And when it comes to other civil rights, it's always good.
Well, when we're talking about
I
oppressed
think we are
groups-
getting down to the border of nerdiness.
Whatever.
There's
Women's
some-
suffrage.
Yeah, I mean,
Yeah.
but it's the idea is that it's easy to say that it's the job of the oppressed to talk about their experiences and their trauma, but it's also the job of the oppressors or the people who aren't the victims in the situation to maybe engage with alternative.
Well, it is very anti-woman to outlaw prostitution, even though that's not
Because it's
just
a means
women.
for us to make money in
It's
a
a
lot.
very good means to make money. That's the
Exactly.
thing. You can't all be nurses and waitresses. Traditionally female, occupations, and then you have a traditionally female occupation that you say no, you can't do because why?
Because we can't regulate it.
Yeah.
Because
Well, but that's the thing though, when there are societies like worse, during the development of gold rush, the women who were there, they had their power because they had the money, and then when they were in charge, for lack of a better word, they actually brought a lot to the community.
Huge.
They were entrepreneurial.
The West-
the people of today don't know anything about that.
Well, now they do.
the West in America was built by
Yeah.
prostitutes.
Oh, absolutely. But
You
if
know?
it wasn't for prostitution, the West would not exist.
It would not exist.
Except for Mormons. They pretty much invented institutionalized prostitution.
Yeah,
They
exactly.
just called them wives.
Yeah,
But
exactly.
if it wasn't for, really, the prostitutes built the West.
Yeah.
They made it so it was possible.
Right.
You can't get 100 dudes in a town and have only one woman, and that's ridiculous.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And when they were making they built, the brothels were kind of at the epicenter of those communities, and all the money that they brought in, they built community centers, they built schools,
Yeah.
they built, when women have economic power, women give back to the community. That's why it's important for us to have economic power in this world in some sense or another,
So let me ask you, you were talking about relationships earlier, you were married before, you're currently married, right? Was that relationship started before or after sex work?
My current marriage, it was after.
Okay, and so she's obviously been cool with you.
I'm actually polyamorous, so I have another partner as well.
Okay.
Yeah.
So you got two partners at home.
2 partners at home.
How do you find time to work? Seriously.
You don't have to work that many hours to make money.
Because that's a lot. So clearly it's a non-issue then if you have a partner who's accepting of a polyamorous relationship.
Exactly.
Well, it's like you found the right combination of people.
I've been lucky and I've been very blessed, yeah.
So there's no OnlyFans to promote or any nothing. No website or webcam where people can find you or something.
Listen, when I make enough money to hire an assistant and a crew, then we'll talk.
We'll be your crew. We work for nothing. Look, I got 3 cameras pointed at me. Clearly I know how to create content.
I'll be calling you in the next
Yeah, it wouldn't be my first rodeo, that's for sure. Yeah. Anything else? So you're really focused on comedy now. Huh? How long have you been doing it?
I performed for the first time mid-May
Yeah.
of this year.
How many shows have you done since then?
I've done approximately 8 or 10.
Okay. Montreal is a really good comedy town, so if you're serious about it, you can get out every night and do comedy. There are multiple venues where you can do that in. The night I saw you is kind of a niche market,
Yeah.
It's a burlesque club and it's like a sex vibe anyway.
Exactly.
But it would be, I don't know how much have you gotten out of that scene a little bit and gone to some of the other clubs?
So we also kind of, with my partner, he started doing comedy about a year and a half ago with his friend, and they decided to start their own show. So that's the first place that I performed. It was a show that they organized, and it's actually done very well. But it was for that reason, because I also feel like some of my content isn't always well received, depending on the crowd.
Well, that's the thing. You have to learn. That's the reason why I suggest you need to get out there, because you have to learn how to make that content palatable.
Yes.
You can't always bank on the room being full of a bunch of open-minded, poly-accepting,
Exactly.
LGBTQ. You know what I mean? So you have to be able to bring that to like the middle of Winnipeg, you know what I mean, or something.
Well, actually, the last 2 times I performed at the Wiggle Room, it was a very different crowd, and not so receptive to the coke and prostitution jokes. I actually performed last minute yesterday.
Oh yeah?
Yeah,
You didn't call me.
Very last minute. No,
Yeah.
I honestly didn't. It was one of my shows that I guess I would consider it to be my first bomb.
Yeah.
Just was very unprepared.
It won't be your last.
I
Everybody
know.
bombs, and bombing is actually better for you than killing when you're young. Because when you first start out and you do well, like you have, it's like you don't learn any lessons from that. You just get a rush. It's just like, you have to learn lessons from not doing well. And so hopefully,
I learned some lessons for sure.
Hopefully, you can look at what you did and think like, okay, what was different, what was awkward,
I definitely analyzed it down to a T. Yeah.
So if people, I was asking about your external links, which there aren't any.
No.
You don't have any, anything like that.
I will be making a website though for my service, because I also in being more open, I met sex workers and kind of see how they work, and some of them work in groups, and so I will be putting up a website. But you can always follow me on Instagram, Peach Club Barbie. And then you can follow all my shows.
There we go. I was just going to add, getting that plug in. So it's Peach Club Barbie.
That's right.
All right. So
Thank you so much for being here, for being so open-minded, for sharing so much about yourself.
yeah.
Thank you for having me.
And I really want to thank you for coming down, for talking. This is wonderful. I would say, I don't know. I don't ask everybody to be on my podcast, but I always have an idea that somebody would make a good guest, and I really thought that way about you. And
Thank you.
I told Sarah, I was like, I don't know if she'll be interested, because we can't pay you what your what your time is worth. But yeah, I'm really glad you came and did it. So
Well, thank you so much for having me.
And thank you. And folks, of course, none of this would happen if we didn't have listeners and viewers, people who watch our stuff. So thank you guys for tuning in.
You.
It's been another episode of On the Road with Dr. Brian here in the house. Bye bye.
I'm here, I'm there, I'm everywhere. Booze, women, and booze. I'm here, I'm there, I'm everywhere.